In this video today, we're going to talk about testing at home or testing at the test center. And the assumption is you have a choice. But to begin with, home.pearsonview.com is a website you can go to see some of the details. So let's go ahead and, I want to talk a little about the positives and negatives of both. And the assumption here would be you have options. As you get closer to the end of the year, pandemic variables, at home might end up being the only realistic option, or just availability, that might be the only realistic option. So if that's the case, I want to definitely make sure you're as updated and knowledgeable on the subject as possible. Now, there's positives and negatives with both. So let's talk about home to begin with. Home, theoretically, there's no issue. It's kind of like I tell people when they take a practice test in our classroom, at the end of one of my classes. I don't know how many points of potential failure there is between your device and wherever my data is stored. Because I know there's hardwired connections, there's wireless connections. There's a lot of, potential connections. So in theory, everything should work. But, and it's not a slam on PMI or anything like that. They make recommendations on technology as strong as they can. Some of the things you want to consider, data, internet, computer, we'll talk a bit about those when we go to the website and look at the requirements. At home, there are no laminated sheets is what we are hearing. In other words, you're only using the virtual dry erase board. Now, we've got 3 different videos about how to create the process matrix, the network diagram and answer questions about it, and earn value, and even a communication channel formula or calculation I threw in as well. So 3 different videos to show you how to make the most of it. Now, comfortable often is thought of as a positive, but comfortable often isn't always the best. It's kind of like game day. Playing football in your backyard is a little different than going to the stadium. And so, like, I've taken a couple of PMI exams at home, and, I didn't have to do the Proctor and things because they were disciplined agile, but which didn't require a Proctor at the time. But, I logged on at like 10:30 at night after the kids had gone to bed, and I was chipping away at things. And, in the back of my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, this is where I write my books and watch Netflix and drink chocolate milk. So while that's comfortable, it was a little hard getting my mind set in, I got to be focused. Now, there can be challenges with the Proctor, because what's going to happen with the PMP exam or PMP and the other tests that you can take from home, you're going to have a webcam, and you're going to be able to, or you're going to have to be able to hold the device up, turn it around, so they can see around your entire setup and verify there's nothing funny. They'll have a mic, the mic hot, and they'll be listening for somebody that might be telling you something, what have you. So some, they don't like, they feel like, gee, why are they thinking I'm cheating? Well, here's the deal. In some parts of the world, they've turned at-home testing off because they call it testing by proxy, where you can pay somebody, I guess they get a fake ID in your name, and they go take the test. And thus, as a result, PMI turned it off. So they want to keep it secure and maintain the integrity. But what I'm hearing is it's good to log on at least 30 minutes early so that Proctor knows you're there and you can get things started with them. Now, at the Pearson View Test Center, it feels like where you should go to take an exam. Like I said, kind of like game day. A football field, feels like where you go play a football game. The backyard feels like where you play catch. The Pearson View Test Center can add to stress. Remember, we've got a video on the anxiety curve, which will explain why you should have some anxiety come test time, and it's natural. But just, you don't want to add to stress any more than you need to. And then there can be people coming and going because people will be taking different tests. You know, and it's not like PMP day is 8 o'clock Central. Everybody go in and say your prayers and start. That's not going to be the case. If anything, it'll be the opposite. And on a positive note, if you do have an issue, theoretically they have immediate assistance. We've been told by some people that if they have technical issues online at home and they need to get the proctor isn't necessarily always there immediately. So those are some characteristics there, either way, positive and negative, of both environments. Now, let's go look at the website. Now, what you can do here, and this is home.pearsonview.com, you can run a system test. I strongly suggest you run a system test. And don't do it the day of your test. Do it a few days beforehand. But what it's going to do, it's going to look at your internet speed, your connectivity, what browser you're using. Do you have enough bandwidth for the camera and things like that? Because if you have issues, that could create a problem. Now, then you can log in, schedule the test, and begin the test. So this is where the magic happens. Now, some of the things they suggest. Quiet, private, device with a webcam. One of my students contacted me the day before his test, and he goes, I use a Surface tablet, and I have an extra monitor connected to it, and they said I can't have more than one monitor. Sorry. And in his case, the test pops up a window around question, 40 or something. Basically says your application has encountered an error. Clicking OK may cause you to lose data. He couldn't get the proctor online. He didn't know what to do, so he tried to take the rest of the test with that window in the environment. He ended up getting an extra attempt on the test, from what I understand, as a result of that. So, a reliable device. Translate. Don't do something with Wi-Fi. Have a hardwired internet connection. Like my iMac right over here, although it probably wouldn't work because of my desk and books and things like that. But where I'm going with that is I have a Wi-Fi connection and I have a hardwired connection both. So if one of them stops working, I still have connectivity. So if you have a device, have a hardwired internet connection. And that just means a network connector plugged in. Now, let's look at some of these, and then strong internet connection. Yeah, strong is consistent and fast. It doesn't mean you need to go buy some new internet connection. But if like I said, you've got a hardwired option where it's a network connection, physical instead of Wi-Fi, do it. Now, Windows, excluding S mode or RT. I'm more of a Mac person, so I'm not exactly sure what S and RT means, but I would assume the majority of Windows 10 and 8.1 is probably not S and RT mode. Technically, I don't know if my Mac would work because I'm running a beta version of the operating system right now, as an example. Now, this pass genuine Windows validation, I think that's something Microsoft put in after a while that basically validates an activation code that it's a legitimate license. And then Linux is not an option. If you're going to be doing it on a tablet, I strongly suggest against that because tablets don't have hardwired internet connections, with a physical network connector, or at least the ones I've seen don't. Now, the firewall. I was talking to one of my students recently, and she's like, well, but, I have an internet connection at the house, and I use a VPN, with work. I work at a bank. And I said, I don't suggest you use the firewall. Well, but it's secure. Now, I hadn't looked at this website at that point in time. I just felt there was risk because, like a corporate firewall, if you have a laptop from work at home and the only way you can get on the internet is via a VPN, and a VPN and a firewall are not exactly the same thing technically, but you could probably have a firewall at home on your home computer. It's not necessarily going to be a horrible deal. But if you've got a work computer and you're VPNing, you got to be connected via VPN to get on the internet, all you're adding are links of potential failure along the way. So use a home computer, a physically wired internet connection, at least 3 days beforehand, but not much more than that. Make sure your software updates are complete with whether it's Mac or Windows operating systems, your browser, whichever one you're going to use, etc. Now, like in this case, all tablets are strictly forbidden. I guess the student of mine that used the Surface, I guess he had a physical keyboard. RAM, it is what it is. If you've got something that'll get the job done, it's probably going to have enough RAM. You've got to have at least that resolution, which is just so many dots by so many dots. No additional monitors. Now, Edge, Safari. Edge is Microsoft. Internet Explorer is Microsoft. Safari is Apple. Chrome is Google, which works on all that. And then Firefox is another alternative to the browser. So any of those work. I would stay with something like Chrome because you just don't want to, you don't want some weird quirk with a browser. And then basically 3 meg up, 2 meg down. If you don't know what that means, basically if you can watch Netflix in your house, you probably have a fast enough connection. Again, though, a hardwired internet connection, just a physical network cable if at all possible. Webcam, so they potentially can see you. They're telling you if you're a Mac user where to go in and adjust your settings so the mic can be on so they can hear, the camera can be on so they can see, and they can see what input you're putting in the computer. Sound and microphone needs to be on, your browser settings, cookies have to be enabled, and pop-ups must be disabled. So anything that blocks pop-ups must be disabled. And if you don't know what that is, look into it beforehand because the day of the test is not a good time to try to figure that out. If at all possible, a battery backup device plugged into your computer to keep it powered in the event you lose power. I'm not saying go buy one of those, but I'd hate to see you have a power outage during your test. And then there's various policies, procedures, FAQs, etc. But that's the basics there. The bottom line is this. I'm very conservative when it comes to attitudes toward risk with a matter like this because the rules are the rules. If they say you got to have this or you got to have at least this, there's a reason. It's not we got 20 miles till empty in the gas tank and the house is 18 miles away. Let's try to make it. You don't want to be doing that with this exam because if you have to redo it, it's going to cost you to take it again. So anyway, that's my recommendation. Now note down here they have when it was last updated. So if you all of a sudden hear something that I'm saying that if it contradicts what I've said here, look down at the date on the web page you might be looking at. They could always change the requirements. So anyway, that's what we've got for you. Thank you. Good luck. Don't hesitate to shoot us an email, info@crosswindpm.com with anything we can do to help.